Datafish bought a car that's supposed to be anyone's dream, a McLaren P1. It costs around $2 million. It's a rare hypercar with only a very limited number of them in the world. This hypercar was manufactured between 2013 and 2015 with only 375 units. It has a 3800cc V8 engine and an electric motor, producing around 900 horsepower. It has rear-wheel drive, a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission, and can go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 3 seconds. Its top speed reaches 350 kilometers an hour. All of this is on top of a very light and complex carbon fiber chassis, but this dream was literally submerged. This car was completely submerged in the rain, not just a little water that entered the interior. The damage was everywhere. Faulty electrical systems, control units that may have burned out, the engine and sensitive components were heavily exposed to water, and many other things that won't be apparent until they start taking the car apart piece by piece. It looks great, but the truth is, what's hidden underneath is far worse than anyone can imagine. Every step in the project is risky, and every decision could mean the difference between it coming back to life or becoming just a work of art for display. In today's video, we'll see just how much of a nightmare a car submerged in this way can be, and we'll see if it can even be repaired, or if the damage is far beyond any rescue attempt. But first, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, and let's get lost. A British supercar. Now, he bought a 2015 McLaren P1. He used many car search websites before to buy the cheapest cars, but this time he really had to make sure that the one he had, even in its terrible condition, was the cheapest in the whole world. He searched everywhere and compared everything to be sure. He found it had only 300 miles on it and was valued at $2 million before it was submerged. It was sold about 10 days before the hurricane, and then the hurricane hit and the world's most famous hypercar was submerged. He was both nervous and excited, having not yet seen it with his own eyes. He took a friend along to assess the situation. They arrived at the area designated for the B1. He observed that in the same garage, another car was parked in the same spot. The second car had been pulled out, but the B1 had been dragged down the street. There was broken glass, many other broken items, and sand. The car's contact with the tree was clearly visible. There was a hole near the engine, and most of the glass was shattered. Upon entering, he noticed a musty smell, and it was clear that everything had been underwater. The glass frame, console, and doors were all made of carbon fiber. He found small pieces of floodwater inside the car, as well as glass in the engine compartment. Looking underneath, he was surprised that there was no extensive corrosion, but there was a lot of sand, and the expensive bolts were still intact. He noted that the water level was not clearly visible, but it was obvious that the entire car was submerged. It was submerged in water. The car's roof is in terrible condition and needs replacing. Most of the exterior carbon fiber parts need work, and there's hardly a panel or roof that's intact. Whenever he remembers that this car was valued at $2 million, he feels like this is crazy. They're definitely trying to move it, but the wheels are badly damaged and loose, so they're installing rims or wheel arches underneath them. It's a difficult and dangerous job because any mistake could ruin it even more. He explains from inside the car that it has an iris screen, controls for race mode, a DRS button, and an e-pass button that also provides an electric boost. He then shows the buttons that control reverse, neutral, and drive. He explains that when you press the e-pass button, the car unleashes its full 900 horsepower on the road. He says this project will be very large, with many mechanical, electrical, and aesthetic problems, but he's almost prepared for all of them. After they get the car to the workshop the next day, they start working on the electric handbrake, which was stuck due to the water. They connect a 12-volt wire to the handbrake motor, and the motor works and the wheel hub rotates normally. He says this is the first electrical component to work on the car since it was submerged, which is a very good sign. He does the same for the right rear wheel and continues cleaning, removing, and changing the wheels. So at the beginning, they're embarking on a very long process. Finally, the car gets off the trailer. He stands next to it and says that he can't believe he is standing next to a McLaren P1. But all of this is of course just the beginning, and in the days to come, he will begin examining, discovering, and learning the entire car with us. The last time they dismantled this part, there was a lot of water in it, and it's still not cleaned. It's normal for him to find that there is still water present, and this is often really floodwater because there is a large amount of mud in it. Belts and strange things, perhaps emergency signs or things related to the original backs. The carpet itself is soft and saturated with water. He comments, of course, that these hypercars are never made for comfort or practicality. He notices something strange, a fireman's sign and emergency instructions that show where to cut the high voltage wires and the 12-volt battery so that the car doesn't start. But the irony is that it's for delivery. For these needs, you need to remove about 12 nails. It doesn't make any sense that the firefighter unscrews all these screws during the fire. The important thing is that while he's unscrewing a small cover, underneath he finds the 12-volt lithium battery, which alone costs around $3,500. The battery compartment is full of eroded sand because the entire car was submerged. He decides to vacuum all of the sand because there's sand, broken glass, and microscopic particles that could cause illness. He considers trying to charge the battery. It might still be fine. Hypercar owners usually never have to vacuum sand from their car filters. The vacuum works very well, but there will likely be traces of broken glass inside the car after cleaning. The appearance has improved significantly. It suggests that McLaren uses screws with smaller heads than normal to save weight. Although the difference is very small, a marginal thing in a single screw, it can make a difference in the overall size of the car and in multiple areas when it comes to weight saving. He unscrews the battery and finds no significant corrosion. He measures the voltage and finds it reads about 1 volt. This means that it's still working. Dope. He checks the fuse box and finds it broken, but the fuses themselves are still working. He decides to change them all, as backup. He explains that any connections not watertight are bound to corrode, but the insulated connections look good, which is definitely a positive sign. He's considering charging the lithium battery, but then changes his mind because there might be water inside which could cause a power surge, so he decides to abandon the idea altogether. They go under the car and disconnect the high voltage system for safety. The connector is slightly corroded, but the main battery looks better than expected. They notice carbon buildup underneath due to the car being towed after the flood, but the damage isn't catastrophic. They remove the first carbon panel, which has a terrible smell, but the lines and connections look acceptable. They remove a very heavy panel full of sand and mud, which explains why the car was sluggish. The engine itself looks very good visually. The high voltage lines are dirty but not damaged. The treadmills are enormous compared to other models. They reach many electrical outlets, and everything is sealed with no rust, which is excellent news. They discovered technological things they didn't know about, like movable air wings in the floor that work with the DRS system. They continue removing the front carbon fiber. During the work, they accidentally broke a tire when the car moved on the tool, but it's not a problem because they won't use those rims or tires anyway. They remove the rear clamshell and understand why car maintenance is so expensive. To do anything, you have to disassemble the entire car in a specific order. They forcibly removed the clamshell, and the carbon fiber made a clicking and popping sound which is unpleasant and scary at the same time, but in the end, everything comes out. They connect it to the computer unit. The surprise is that all the surfaces are intact. There isn't a single point of corrosion. This is the biggest victory of the day. They're still not sure if it's the computer or the ECU itself. The car appears sound internally, but the indicators are positive. Ultimately, they decided to stop here. The next step is to inspect the engine internally, examining and testing it. They'll start with the spark plugs. In the past few days, they've identified all the problems the car has experienced and removed the upper rear section to check if the area behind the engine is usable. Today, their goal is to determine if the engine itself is sound. They explained that if this engine were in any other McLaren, it would cost around $100,000. But in this particular example, it's now worth approximately $500,000. Before starting on the engine, they said they needed to clean all the sand, dirt, and glass inside the car. After the cleaning process, they began inspecting the valve bodies and intercoolers. They noticed that everything was clean, with almost no signs of water or rust. They considered this a small but very important victory before examining the engine internally. Then they used a camera. He used a small borescope to see inside the cylinders. He started by placing the camera in the first cylinder hole and saw the valve head, which was very clean with no traces of water, and everything looked excellent. Then he looked at the injectors, which also appeared in good condition. He cleaned part of the intake manifold in the second cylinder. Looking inside the cylinder, he saw the crosshatch, which are the rough lines on the cylinder surface that form a small pattern on the inside of the cylinder wall. This is a noticeable indication that the new engine is indeed free of any major scratches. He noticed some minor dirt, but this is normal from the engine not being run, and there are no signs of water entrance or leaks so far. After that, he started removing the spark plugs. He explained that working with spark plugs in McLarens is very difficult because the space is very tight, and the socket and extension must be installed one by one in the hole. He discovered that the coils were slightly wet, but make sure the spark plugs themselves aren't affected. Use a vacuum cleaner to remove water from the spark plug holes. There was some sea smear and some bacteria or mold, but it's not dangerous. It just needs a good engine flush. Then add Marvel Mystery Oil to each cylinder for 2 days to soften the dirt and mold. Then they took the car to the McLaren dealership and met with an expert in rare McLaren cars who determined that the battery and fuel tank had been removed. There was a coolant leak, the turbocharger needed rebuilding, and the wiring harness needed to be completely replaced. The engine could be repaired, but the hybrid system still needed monitoring because it was known for water leaks. During the inspection, they also discovered that all the brakes had problems due to salt water eroding the copper gaskets. All 4 bumpers had high pressure leaks, but some of the parts can be repaired, and they actually found spare parts for it. But unfortunately, the second, more expensive part needs to be completely replaced. Finally, they received the price report from McLaren's Orlando branch, and that's when the real madness began. The front splitter costs $29,000, and the large front section costs $70,000. The carbon fiber engine cover alone is also $25,000. So everything here is in thousands of dollars, even for seemingly simple things. The butterfly doors that open fully upwards with everything inside and all the systems cost $800,000. The large rear section, which is the aluminum frame, will cost around $130,000 if they can even source it. The active aero rear wing that supports DRS technology is made to order, of course, at $60,000. And then there's the single wheel, made entirely of carbon fiber, especially for McLaren. It would cost them $18,000, all without the hybrid battery and its harness or wiring. So the total bill, including all parts and without any work, reached about $753,000. He said he definitely wasn't going to pay all that at once without thinking, so he would try to find and get many used parts. But here he would enter a challenge, or rather a seemingly endless cycle, because it's obvious that spare parts for a car like the McLaren's P1 would likely be very rare, and if he were lucky enough to find used parts, the price would be very high. So as I told you at the beginning, to fix it himself and avoid the crazy high price of the dealership, this would take him years. He went back to the garage and started working on the car by taking apart all the middle parts that are stacked together, called the front clamshell, to see underneath if there was anything else that needed replacing. This whole piece is made of carbon fiber, which makes it look very nice and easy to arrange, but at the same time, it's expensive. It was especially difficult when the parts were broken or damaged. They started to disassemble the car and described the difficulty, particularly since they didn't have an official service manual from the factory. They had to try to locate the bolts themselves. During the disassembly, they discovered hardened sand inside the car, resembling small rocks or sea sand. They also found something called a sun, a factory part used to adjust the panel spacing. Tavarish suggested they use washers instead of these suns when reassembling everything. They removed all the bolts and parts, encountering numerous problems such as broken clips that were tightly fastened. However, after some effort and removing the bolts, they managed to remove the entire piece without causing significant damage to the carbon fiber itself. They then examined the internal parts, which showed considerable corrosion from water and salt. They decided they would have to clean it. Everything was fine. After that, he started working on the dashboard, which was also corroded, and he also discovered that there were bolts or nuts that were all rusty and did not want to move, and he had to cut the carbon fiber in order to remove the dashboard. After a while, electrical tools and patients were able to remove it relatively safely. Behind the dashboard, he found items from the 12C model and the 650S, such as an HVAC, a brake, and also gas, all of which are available for sale. This is an abundance of opportunity. He gets everything new and replaces anything affected by water. Then he starts showing off many spare parts he brought from England, such as parts from the P1 too, and some from the 600LT and 570S. This is because many of these parts will be suitable for use in his model, instead of the very expensive parts that McLaren provides. He explains how he managed to get the front and rear frames, and the electrical parts which will make reinstalling each system easier, especially the wiring, which he was able to get for almost half the price. One of the most important things he noticed was that the original battery was old and affected by salt and water, so he plans to install a new battery with better technology, made of lithium ion sulfate, which is 20% lighter and provides more power for a longer range. They'll be able to preserve the car's original appearance. He says that when old batteries fail, the entire system has to be readjusted, and this used to take about a month. For each battery, he also shows how he'll install parts from other cars on his P1 model, especially the instrument cluster. This is a big project because it will require new programming. Finally, he shows us one of the engine harnesses, so the electrical wiring is practically ready. This will help him rewire the entire car, which he expects to take 1 to 2 weeks. He then shows all the other parts behind the dashboard, like the vents made of styrofoam to reduce weight, and the airbags, which are intact and cheaper than what he could easily get from the dealership, though much more expensive. Despite the high prices of spare parts at the dealership, the rusty nuts, and the problems he encountered at every step, he made good progress in disassembling the car. But the worst is yet to come. The car is now a shell because he's completely removed the body, and he also needs to disconnect all the wiring. A large part of this requires removing everything from the back. The car, like the engine, gears, electrical system, and all the hoses and wires, was something he was both apprehensive and excited about that day because he was going to remove the engine. The problem was he didn't have a steering wheel cover, so he had to work by hand in a somewhat dangerous position. This was his first lift of the McLaren. He wasn't trying to be careless at all, but rather trying to work safely and efficiently. The car had 2 lift points, one slightly inside and the other at the rear. He chose the rear one, and the car was still quite heavy and balanced. He was going to try lifting the rear of the car and securing it well so no one would get hurt. But what happened was honestly scary. He certainly didn't want the car to fall off the lift, but after tightening everything, the car became more and more stable, and he was a little scared. Now he had a specific part of the exhaust which he was almost certain was full of water or something similar. If he removed it, he would know if water had entered the engine or not. It came out fine, no water, but there's some rust around the turbo. It looks very damaged and most likely needs to be replaced or rebuilt. The brakes and everything else are off. The axles have minor issues, but they might need to be replaced. The entire suspension needs to be removed to access all the nuts and bolts, and then the axles can be removed. The engine should be completely removed, and it's all ready now. The entire hydraulic system and suspension have been removed so that when he reinstalls everything, it'll be easier. One good thing now is that the engine coolant pump doesn't need to go to the dealership. The connections are good and there's no rust, but the turbo looks damaged from water and sand. It definitely needs a thorough cleaning and rebuild. This car is very advanced because it's the most expensive McLaren that has come to his workshop, and he's probably glad the engine is out of the car now so he can work on it. As we mentioned at the beginning, this engine is a twin-turbo, the same engine. The powertrain is similar to many McLarens, but with significant differences due to the electrical auxiliary system. This system uses a small motor that works with the larger engine to distribute power. His plan is to put this engine back in the car, but he can't use a regular gearbox because the block is different and needs some modifications for the engine to run properly. The turbochargers had problems, one part needed cleaning and completely rebuilding, and the other was completely jammed. So everything needs to be removed and adjusted, but this will be done later. Currently, he's able to work on the turbochargers, modifying them, replacing weak components, and increasing the engine displacement from 3,800 cc's to 4,000 cc's because he decided to install a stroker kit. The pistons will be replaced with stronger components to handle the increased power. Around 1,600 horsepower is possible in this car, but the goal is to get around 1,000 horsepower from the gasoline engine to make it drivable. The pistons are strong, it's meticulously crafted, and the goal is for the engine to last and withstand power without problems. Even though some people suggested using titanium rods, he decided he didn't need them. The steel rods are sufficient and very strong. He hasn't completely disassembled the engine at the workshop yet, but he intends to send it for a full disassembly to see how much floodwater got inside and then start installing the new pistons and components. The workshop has another McLaren all modified to withstand greater power. The goal is to modify the engine, increase its power, and make it more reliable with the very high power output. So he goes to look at other cars in the collection to get the old battery and start working on it. He's happy with the color, the carbon fiber, and the car's clean design, which is very suitable for the modifications he intends to make. He wants to start the car for the first time and see everything working, especially the electric assist charging system. This will allow him to start the modifications he intends to make to his car directly. Unfortunately, the carbon fiber part of the car needs repair because there's a clearly damaged section, and he'll separate it slightly, about an inch on each side, to reach the undamaged carbon fiber and assess the extent of the damage.
Carbon fiber is made of carbon strands with additional protective layers on top. This repair process makes the carbon very strong and lightweight. He also noticed damage to the carbon foam, so he'll need to remove it and slightly adjust the car's appearance, because the entire floor is very flat and the damaged part needs to be leveled. They'll make a new piece of foam to secure the car, and they'll also make connections between the old and new parts. It's essential that all the carbon layers are aligned, ensuring all the threads are facing each other correctly. This makes the carbon very strong. Then he talked with Matt from the A3 Customs workshop, which did the interior decoration for the McLaren and many other models. The car's interior light is now disassembled, and Matt will see if he can modify the steering wheel along with some padding, as the rest of the carbon doesn't need major modification. Everything at the rear of the car will be replaced. All the wiring and airbags won't be preserved, including the steering column, because like other McLarens, the seats are identical to the McLaren 675 LT, but they smell much worse, so he won't focus on gray and white. He wants something better. The car will be completely modified, and the goal is to make it stronger and faster. The power is now 900 horsepower, which is good, and from an engineering perspective, phenomenal. But he wants to increase it further to 1200 or even 1400 horsepower. To achieve this, he'll modify the gearbox for faster shifting and also the hydraulic suspension system. The exterior design will be more distinctive and modern, with a different custom carbon body kit and a more premium interior to make it more expensive and luxurious, so no one will criticize it as a flooded car. He reiterated that he will name this car the B1 Evo. Then he started dismantling the 3800cc V8 turbo engine. The engine was flooded, and everything, hose, wires, everything, will be disassembled and repaired. The cylinder heads have some initial warping and need welding and realignment. The old turbocharger is completely sealed, but there's a proven method for cleaning it, using an ultrasonic cleaner with water. Framed and cleaned with solutions, this will